Rumpelstiltskin missed the days when he could heal an injury with a gesture and a twist of magic. Now his head ached and his eyes still burned from Ashley's mace. To add insult to injury, Mary Margaret had insisted on patching his cut temple. The only kind of band-aids a self-respecting schoolteacher carried meant that he now found his temple adorned with a bright yellow band-aid with cartoon eyes. SpongeBob SquarePants, she informed him as she leaned close to stick it in place. He knew she was upset that he was hurt, but also angry, and she was taking out her frustration on him the only way she could, with humiliating medical treatment. Emma was standing close by. They had patched the window of the shop door with a piece of board, then bundled him into Emma's bug and brought him back to the house. Mary Margaret rinsed his eyes herself, and the first thing he saw as his vision cleared was the narrow-eyed focus and the flush of fury in her face. Always so protective of that which was hers, he mused. "So," she said, once the wound was covered. "Explain." He sat back in the thickly upholstered armchair. "It's a long story." Mary Margaret folded her arms, and Emma perched on the arm of her chair. "We have time," his wife said. From the moment they had found him until now, he had been going through plausible ways to explain away Ashley's invasion of the shop. Once upon a time, a desperate girl had made a deal with a monster. Not long after, she tried to make another and did not listen well enough. She ended up letting him sign a deal that he had negotiated, and now the price was to be paid on their first bargain, no matter if she maced him and stole the papers away. In this world, in this time, in this place, perhaps only the truth would do if he was to keep the Savior on his side. He folded his hands slowly, one over the other. "It was Ashley Boyd," he murmured. "Ashley?" Emma said in disbelief. "Small girl, blonde, pregnant?" "Indeed," he said. "She was quite beside herself, babbling about changing her life." He would not have noticed the sudden, guilty look that flashed across Emma's face if he had not known to watch for it. Nothing changed in Storybrooke, not until the Savior touched it. She was, quite unlike herself. Mary Margaret fixed her eyes on him intently. "And why would she come after you, Cam? Did she steal anything?" "Smart girl. Snow White always was." "There was an arrangement," he said finally. Each word was carefully picked and arranged in the most benevolent way possible. The grandfather of the child wanted to be sure it would be taken care of when the time came. "Adoption." Emma's voice was flat. "Better than being taken into care when its mother inevitably faltered," Rumpelstiltskin pointed out. "A good home was found, a couple who have wanted a child for some time." He looked at Mary Margaret, hoping against hope that their imagined past would give her some level of understanding. "Miss Boyd signed the contract willingly." "Why did she go to you?" Emma asked abruptly. "Why not go through social services?" Rumpelstiltskin smiled slightly. "The formal adoption process is long and complicated," he said. "I was considered a shortcut, so to speak." He shrugged, lifting one hand to touch the corner of his eye. It was still stinging from the mace. "I can't imagine what came over her to think that stealing the contract would render it invalid." "What came over her is that she wants to keep her child," Emma said. "You have no idea what that feels like." Rumpelstiltskin was impressed that he restrained himself from flinching. All the same unwanted words spilled out. "Don't I?" For a split second, both Emma and Mary Margaret stared at him. He forced his mouth into a smile. "Perhaps I do, perhaps I don't," he murmured. "What matters is that she signed a contract. She accepted the financial recompense that came from it quite happily. Now she breaks into my shop, assaults me, robs me, and tries to break a transaction for which she has already been paid. I understand her distress, but surely you can't defend her actions." "A child, Cameron?" Mary Margaret said quietly. "You brokered the trade of a child?" He clasped his hands tightly together in his lap. "I found a child a home," he said, his voice taut. I think I am being remarkably generous given what would happen to her if I had allowed you to call the police. You're right, Emma said, rising from the arm of the chair. If you'd called the cops, the kid would be taken into care. She walked in a slow circle. She wants to keep it, Gold. She's scared, sure, but she doesn't want to lose her kid. She looked at him with her mother's fierce eyes. You know she was probably pushed into signing that contract. Be that as it may, Rumpelstiltskin murmured, she signed a contract. The couple who paid her did so in good faith. I have no doubt that any monies paid to her have been spent, and if the contract is cancelled, I would be the one who stands to lose, both in reputation and financially. Emma turned to look at him. Is that all that matters to you? He met her eyes. No, he said quietly. I understand the importance of family and giving a child a good home more than you could know. She continued to gaze at him as if she could read his mind, then finally nodded. Okay, she said, putting her hands on her hips, rocking on the balls of her feet. So first things first is that we have to find her. We can work out where to go from there once we sit her down and talk to her. Rumpelstiltskin almost smiled at that. A sensible option, who would have thought? Very well, he said, rising. I can't make any promises, but you find the girl and we can consider our options.